How do you know when the Feast of Tabernacles is close? Troubles. Have any of you kind of had those troubles, those pre-feast troubles? Well, I've certainly had my share. Hostile phone call. The traffic in the city of Okeechobee is down to one lane. People are frustrated. Road rage, arrest, and we're next down to one line. Don't try and break that line because you will not get in. And it makes it very frustrating for me because I have to travel the city and doing my inspections. And have I gotten an attitude out there? Of course I have. But I rely on all my back roads. I know them, but there's one problem. The city's cut in half by Taylor Creek. So you have to get out into that insane mob just to get to the other side of town. So it's been trying. It's tried my patience and trying to control myself, but in some cases I don't win. But the main trouble that I had, it was this week. My daughter ended up in the hospital. She had surgery. But the problem was she had a perforated ulcer, more than one. So she had peritonitis from the leakage. She was in severe pain. I was worried about it, of course, as a father should be. And I've always, because of her health issues, I've always been prepared to lose her. And that was a little close for me. But fortunately, she had the surgery. She had a tube down her nose that went in her lungs. She had a tube in her that went down to her stomach. But she also had ports. She said when she kind of came to her senses, she told me when she looked down, of course, there's the scar. But she had all these tubes coming out of her. But thankfully, we have a God who cares. And he cares for our children as well. Even though they may not be in the church, in his eyes, there's a certain sanctification there. So the good news is my daughter is going home tomorrow. She has spent 4 days in that hospital. She wasn't even allowed to eat until today. So I knew it was good. She said, I got some sleep. They're going to let me eat. And her sense of humor returned. So I knew right then and there she made it. So that was great. But that's, when you combine all of these issues, especially so close to the feast, it can be very distracting. Like, what happens if I do lose my daughter? Because you know what that involved. That involves family, that involves funeral, and so forth. I was a little concerned about my attitude because of the traffic and hostile calls at work and things like that. So when I was listening to Derek this morning, when he mentioned about that lion that's out there doing everything he can to distract you, discourage you, in my case, he didn't win. It was tough. It was tough. I was scared with my daughter, but God won, and that's all that matters. But there's one experience I had that has led to this sermon. There are times at work I have to be a prosecutor in a code enforcement hearing. And I had one, it was on the 10th. And this one I'm going to tell you about. She was, normally when I prosecute a case, I give my facts with the documentation and everything like that. Usually I win that hands down. But when the defendant takes the lead, usually all these excuses, well, this isn't right, he's lying, and so forth and so forth. That did not happen in this case. It was a woman. She's a traveling nurse, but she's kind of a frail woman. And when she came up to the podium, there was something so different there because she was, I don't want to use the word petrified, but she was close to it. She was frightened. I had to give her some Kleenex, like you have down here by your chair. And she was in tears, but what was coming out of her was help. Please help me so I can get this resolved. The thing that happened, I have never seen that before. And I was overwhelmed with compassion. Never have I felt it in that way. And of course, when the magistrate made his decision, and so he gave her X number of days and so forth, I called her over to me. And I told her, I said, please come and see me. I can help you. And 2 days later, that's exactly what she did. And I had a contractor, a gentleman, who I have a lot of trust in. His word is good. I explained it to him. He said, I'll take care of it. Well, what the point is, I have never had that experience before in my life. And it kind of answered a question that I had. What did Jesus Christ see when he was overwhelmed with compassion? There was something he saw that moved him. Well, I can say I've had that experience. Never before has that happened to me. It's kind of like God saying, you don't really understand what compassion is, Jeff. Yeah, you can feel sorry for someone and so forth, but I wanted you to experience this, to understand it. And I thank God for that. You know, us old guys can learn new tricks. Not done yet. Especially when it comes to God, because I got called to his classroom. And I've been called to the principal's office too. But I think that happens to all of us. But I have a definition or a statement, I would say, about what is compassion. And it reads, compassion is not just a feeling sorry for another, and I know we all have, or an ability to step into another's shoes. Empathy. This is something we've done, hey, been there, done that. I've been in your shoes. And there's been instances where you sort of had compassion, but you didn't do anything about it. So that keeps swimming in my mind, but it goes further. It said it requires a movement away from a focus on one's own self and self-interest in order to go out of one's way and help others who are in need. Now that says a lot in my mind. How about you? You say, when you feel sorry for someone or you say, yes, I've been in your shoes, have you ever asked yourself a question? Is there a self-interest here on my part? Or is there something myself can gain? What do I get out of this? It was kind of, I'll be honest, God was asking me that question. He says, I know you've been sympathetic in some things, Jeff, but did yourself and your self-interest interfere? And that's what I had to look at, and the answer is yes. Because that makes so much sense to me that one's own self and self-interest in order to go out of one way to help others who are in need. So I look at my daughter's situation. There was no self or self-interest there. It was the love for my daughter. The compassion, which I felt very strongly. That's the difference that I'm being shown here. And it's, I thought I would share that because you do have to ask yourself that question. Is your compassion true to the point where it removes self and self-interest out of the picture? And yet and whatever you do, you don't expect it in return. That's a question you have to ask yourself. But I want to go to 1 John 3:17 through 19. Because this answers a lot. It says, if someone has enough money to live well and sees a brother or sister in need but shows no compassion, how can God's love be in that person? So as I read that, I'm going, okay, Jeff, what's in play here? Self and self-interest. Yes, I have the means to help this person, but I don't want to do it. For whatever the reason may be. And then God follows, he says, dear children, let not mercy Oh no, let's not merely say that we love each other, but let us show the truth by our actions. Now I know all of us understand that, actions. Words speak louder than actions. You may say, okay, so forth and so forth, but your actions say something different. As a matter of fact, we had a conversation about that at work. We were talking about something and, well, this person, so-and-so. I said, but what are his actions? If his actions aren't what he says he is, you know the truth. You know the truth by the actions. And then going on, it says, our actions will show that we belong to the truth. And we will be confident when we stand before God. Now it's that our actions will show that we belong to the truth. What do you think that is? Because I can tell you as an example at work, they know why I keep the days I do. They know that. That is truth. Because I know in instances it's human. I've seen it done where, people will hide certain things about their life because they don't want anybody else to know because they're afraid of criticism, possibly being ostracized. But you got to be the truth. Our actions have to show that. And I know there's conversations I had at work, and I got a couple that disagree with me. There was an incident we had a discussion about death. I told them, when you're dead, you're dead. The dead know nothing. Oh, that really rocked the boat. But I said, there's a hope. It's in Revelation 20, verses 5 and 6, where it talks about the resurrections. And I said to them, this is what you believe? That you die, you go up to heaven and don't have a clue what you're doing up there. But there's one thing I want you to explain to me. How do you get from here to a resurrection? No answer. And I kind of get the cold shoulder from an individual, but that's okay. It is. I just go about my business as usual. But the thing is speaking the truth. Because unfortunately, this particular individual likes to preach in the lunchroom. My tongue is between my teeth. And then I just couldn't do it anymore when she went there. Couldn't do it. So we're okay, but she will not talk to me either. But that's fine. She knows. Go to Revelation 20, verses 5 and 6. You're afraid of it, so be it. But it's the truth. So it's things like that. But then I was thinking, what are some examples to help me understand it fuller? And in Ruth 1, verses 15 through 18, now you got to understand, you see those 3 dots in there? I'm taking portions out of the narrative there because I want to stay on a focus there. And it says, Naomi said to her, Ruth, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. You should do the same. Ruth replied, don't ask me to leave you and turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us. When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she said nothing more. So I asked myself, what's going on here? I mean, Naomi, her husband died. Her 2 sons died. The one daughter-in-law left. Naomi did not. So I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? Obviously, Ruth had compassion on Naomi. She was alone. No one Her husband was gone. Her sons were gone. And Ruth went with her. So I'm saying, okay, she gave up whatever her self-interests are. And she went with Naomi. And we'll continue because now we come to a part, Boaz, because there's a key here in what's here with Boaz. It says, the foreman replied, she is the young woman from Moab who came back with Naomi. She asked me this morning if she could gather grain behind the harvesters. Boaz went over and said to Ruth, listen, my daughter, stay right here with us when you gather grain. Stay right behind the young women working in the field. And I love this one. It says, I have warned the young men not to treat you roughly. He's protecting her. And he goes, and Ruth replied, what have I done to deserve such kindness? Boaz replied, I also know about everything you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. Yeah, Ruth had no ties to Naomi, but she stayed with her. And as Boaz continues, I have heard how you left your father and mother and your own land to live here amongst complete strangers. Ruth answers back, you have comforted me by speaking so kindly to me, even though I am a foreigner. Back in those times, foreigners weren't welcome at all. But there's something here. Speaking so kindly. Isn't this something that I know I've experienced as well as yourselves? When someone speaks roughly to you, what's your reaction? Your reaction is to speak roughly back, to push back. But to speak kindly. Think of the power that has. Because I could possibly, at work, there are times I'm a little grumpy, upset with someone. But if they approach me speaking kindly, that changes everything. It changes everything. And the effect on me is to do the same back. So when someone is speaking kindly, it has a lot of power. And in this particular case, it has to do with compassion. Because as I look at this person who's speaking kindly to me all of a sudden, there is compassion there. The fight's gone. And it's powerful. I think that's something that all of us should keep in mind. Someone gets a little rough with us, speak kindly to them. It may change their attitude. It probably will. I've seen it. I've experienced it. It's something to keep in mind. Because we're about to go to the Feast of Tabernacles. Should we not be speaking kindly to one another? We are. I know sometimes things can get a little rough at the feast, a little argument, or I don't like living with you anymore, that kind of thing. Speak kindly to one another. I look at this feast, I don't want to say it's my last, but I'm not thinking in the sense of I'm going to be in the ground. No. We don't know what it's going to be like a year from now. We're going to be facing an election after the feast. What changes are going to happen in this country because we can see the path it is on? And I want to say, enjoy this feast, no matter how old you are, as though it's your last one. That's something to keep in mind. It is for me, because of what's going on. And I'm concerned. I'm real concerned. Because, been enjoying the feast for 51 years, could this be the last one that we can assemble at? That worries me. So basically, Jeff, enjoy this one in the way that God wants us to. Being at peace with one another. Speaking kindly to one another. Have some compassion. Don't let your self-interest get in the way. Something to consider. I am. But going on, I have Joseph here. This is Genesis 50:15 through 21. This is one part. It says, "But now the father was dead, Jacob. Joseph's brothers became fearful." That's understandable. "Now Joseph will show his anger and pay us back for all the wrong we did to him." But of course the brothers, they are what they are, and they got this message back to Joseph about that he's supposed to treat them right. Don't do any harm to them, because they were afraid of Joseph. But Joseph's reply was, "Don't be afraid of me. Am I God that I can punish you?" He said, "No. Don't be afraid. I will continue to take care of you and your children." So he reasoned them by what? Speaking kindly to them. I see that as being a message to us as well. Speak kindly to one another. It will go so much better. There will be more respect for one another. And it's just simply the right thing to do. And then there was the Good Samaritan. But I want to go ahead because we know the story of the Samaritan, the priest and the temple assistant just totally ignoring the guy. And here comes a despised Samaritan. He took care of the man. Was there any self-interest on his part? The answer is no. He had compassion, where this man was half dead. He took care of him, and he also told the innkeeper, here's some silver to take care of him, and if it's more than that, I will pay you when I come back. But I kind of want to look at the way Jesus Christ looked at things. And in Mark 1, verses 40 through 41, it states, "A man with leprosy came and knelt in front of Jesus, begging to be healed." And I think I read in one translation, there were a lot of people around there telling this guy to shut up. They wanted to hear what Christ had to say. Well, he kept on. I guess he got louder. He said, "If you are willing, you can heal me and make me clean," he said. Moved with compassion, Jesus reached out and touched him and said, "I am willing." He said, "Be healed." When I see that "I am willing," where do I go for a recent event? My daughter. She's recovering. She's doing very well, even though we were frightened, my wife and I, that we may lose her. And of course the prayers went out. That was another part of compassion that I was sensing. It was like that lady when I was prosecuting her. There was something different. There was something I saw that I haven't done before. And it says, I hear where Jesus, he moved with compassion. My question is, what did he see? Now we know God does not judge from the outward appearance. He looks at the inner self, the heart. I can only surmise that the man's suffering, but I think there's far more than that. I think there's an element of faith there. That this man was able, he did it, he approached Christ, but it's the way he said, "If you are willing, have mercy on me. I'm in pain here." Was that what Christ saw? But he saw something that moved him. Now, does that not kind of come back to us? What compassion? God had compassion on us. Did he not? You wouldn't be sitting here if he didn't. I mean, I look at what my life was. I look at the things I'm still fighting. But God's compassion is there. He's going to help us. He's going to help me. Yes, Jeff, I know what your problems are. But your heart towards me is right. That is why. That's what moves me. Never to let you go. Compassion. It has a whole different meaning to me now. To actually feel something that runs deep to the point where I need to help this person. Or I need to do something to relieve the problems and the stress that they're having. Because have I done that in the past? No. I've seen things where, I really feel bad for them. But did I do anything? No. So I think it was kind of in the classroom there of God's classroom, a shaming, yes. But I'm going to give you something, a deeper understanding about people that have needs. And if you're moved with compassion, do something about it. If you can, and you're able, but don't walk away. Kind of saying, I don't want you doing that anymore, Jeff. I've given you an understanding that has changed you. It has moved you to take a different view at things. And I'm very thankful that that happens. But I'm going to go to, in closing, to 1 Peter 3, verses 8 through 9. It says, finally, all of you be like-minded. Be sympathetic. Love one another. Be compassionate and humble. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing. Because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing. This is my message for the upcoming feast. These very words, like-minded, sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. That is what we are supposed to be when we're attending this assembly. We must do this. I believe this because of the troubles we have in the world and this country today, the difficulties with the inflation, the difficulty with people right now. They're angry, they're frustrated, and rude. We cannot take that to the feast. We should be doing this very thing. Be compassionate and humble. Because I know there are times, about myself, there are times I went to the feast, but didn't always engage in everything. Showed up for services and things like that. And there were, calls for, some people needing money to finish the feast and things like that. I'm ashamed of myself for ignoring that, but I'm going to tell you this time, when that comes up or that need is to be done, I am going to be part of it. Because that's what God expects of me. He also expects it of you, to be that compassionate and humble. So, brethren, I wish you a good time at the feast. But I also ask you to be compassionate and loving towards one another.